When it comes to new construction homes going into 2025, there's a couple of things that might make or break the new construction housing market and your ability or lack of ability to potentially get into a new home, especially here in DFW. So I got like 5 things on my list that I want to talk to you about today. And then at the end, I've got a couple of charts and some data points that I'm going to be a kind of nerd about. So maybe you're a nerd and you like talking about those things too. But either way, I'm going to tell you what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling as somebody who spends a ton of time in the new construction real estate market, hopefully to kind of give you some data, some information that help you make an informed decision. My job, as always, is to help any way I can give perspective. If we haven't met before, my name is Zach. My team and I, we sell new construction real estate here in DFW. That's what we specialize in. So we spend a lot of time in this space, and I'm here to help answer any questions, represent you in transactions, get you connected to builders, whatever I can. But again, ultimately at the end of the day, I feel like my job is to do whatever I can to give you some honest perspective. I'm not trying to persuade you one way or the other. I just believe that data doesn't lie, which is why I, tend to love to look at these kind of things, talk about what I'm hearing, and give you the information as I can. So let's get right into it, and we'll just go from there. So a couple weeks ago, I was at a dinner with a handful of high-level sales executives and VPs for probably 10 or 12 different builders here in the DFW market, and a couple of lenders that do a lot of new construction home loans. And sitting at the table, first of all, I recognized that I was way, way, way outside my league, and it was an incredible honor just to be at the table. But hearing some of the things they talked about kind of brought some thoughts to mind that I've been feeling on a smaller level, but hearing them articulate it at a big level, I think is important for me to share with you, and important for me to share some thoughts that I heard, because it probably shapes the perspective of what is going to happen in the DFW new construction real estate market for the end of 2024 and going into the first part of 2025. So I've got notes on, like I said, 4, maybe 5 things, and then I've got some charts and numbers for us to talk about, give you some perspective, and hopefully give you, put a bow on this all at the end and say, hey, here, from what we know, here's what I think we should do. So number one thing that I heard sitting in that meeting that I kind of knew, but I heard everybody reiterate, and it was interesting because you had, like I said, VPs and sales executives from builders that build at about a $300,000 to $400,000 price point, all the way up to builders that build at about an $800,000 to $1 million price point. And hearing these conversations happen, it was a lot of the same things. So one of the biggest things I think that is being recognized is this thing is, and I don't know how I'm going to number these. I just want to talk about them, right? We recognize no matter how many people move in or move out of DFW, no matter how many, houses or whatever, there's one thing that's a finite resource that will eventually run out, and it's land. And the recognition is that land acquisition cost and land development costs are still on the rise. A lot of the conversation was centered around, hey, we feel like we've gotten control of the labor market. We feel like we have a good return in trades and labor. Like they could always naturally still use more, but they're not seeing prices rise too crazy there. There's not a lot of material shortage anymore. There's still a little bit in some places, but for the most part, the material shortage, the supply chain stuff, that's kind of taken care of. The spikes in material cost have not continued, so that's kind of taken care of. But one of the things that was a continuing resounding thought is the cost of land acquisition and development is still up. So what's happening is the landowners or the developers, they still hold a lot of the power in this situation because land is finite, right? Like there's no way to create more, and there's only so many places that can be developed. And now we can, argue yes, no, right, wrong, and different about, we shouldn't develop all this and we shouldn't do this and we shouldn't. We don't have to argue about that. Like DFW is growing, it will continue to be developed, and they recognize that. And so when they recognize that, they see that like they can charge whatever they want to get into that space, right? So buying on raw land is one thing, but buying in with development, with roads and sewers and infrastructure and all of those things, pricing is still going up, and the developers kind of have everybody on that, and builders are feeling the heat. So they're feeling it in the sense of, hey, we're paying more for land acquisitions. This is why, a lot of places you're seeing when you see new phases, it's like, oh, hey, they did phase 1 and 2 last year, and then they're showing, phase 3 is coming in 2025, and there's a changeover in the builders, and it's like, this builder used to be here and now they're not here, and it's like, well, what happened? Well, part of it may have been that their product didn't perform well in that particular market, But truthfully, a lot of it may be that land cost went up significantly for that development. For example, there was one of the builders was talking about how they were in a phase 1 of a development and they just weren't going back to phase 2 because on average they were seeing a $30,000 to $40,000 increase per home site. We can't, that's not sustainable. We can't figure out a way to that either has to get passed on to the consumer, which means our pricing is going to be stupid, or we don't have the margins to do that. So they're seeing land costs, acquisitions are up, even though labor and material is somewhat stabilized. And secondarily, the developers want more skin in the game from these builders, which means they're putting more and more money on the table for their earnest money deposits to lock up their land positions so that they can do what they do their takedowns and get started. So they're putting more money on the table, and they're having to put more money on the table to do interest rates and all of those things. So builders have a ton of money going out, and so this is not a hey, I'm not trying to get you to throw a pity party for them and be like, it's not that. It's just understanding the cost of doing these kind of deals and doing this kind of business is significantly increasing, which is part of why I believe we're still continuing to see prices rise in the new construction space and in just DFW in general as things push out. So if somebody was like, I think there's going to be massive price reductions in the new construction space in 2025. I don't think there is. You may see minor instances where you get individualized price reductions on inventory or individualized price reductions on builds, but a massive reduction where you're seeing full neighborhoods drop 50, 60, 70, $100,000. I don't think it's going to be that. I think there will be individual blips that you'll see, and those are going to be all about timing and finding the right deal. But as a whole, as long as these land costs and the development costs continue to go up, you're going to see prices continue to get passed along to the consumer. The other piece of that, the secondary piece of that, is it means the outskirts are becoming less and less the outskirts, which means if you're some of my clients that are looking in that $300,000 to $500,000 range, or even that realistically that under 400, that 400 to 300 range, and looking in, especially as those first-time home buyers, it probably means we're going to have to get further and further out, and we're going to have to be in a place where we're commuting. So think Lavon, a Farmersville, a Forney, a Kaufman, a Red Oak, if you're going potentially on the west side, maybe a Weatherford, a Crowley, north would be an Aubrey, anything above 380, not Prosper, Frisco. You're going to be a little bit further out, so you're going to have to be in a space where you're making a little bit more of a commute. If you're going to be in that we'll call it a 3 to probably 450 range, which is where we find a lot of our first time buyers are wanting to be. Now you're still going to see higher end, 4 to 7, 800 range being developed in those kind of central circles spaces, the Rock Walls, the Wileys, the Plano's not really being developed in, that inner circle. And then of course up north where we're seeing a lot of growth, the Frisco, the Prosper, the Salina, those prices are still going to increase, and it's going to get more and more expensive to go up into those spaces. So you're going to be farther out. The outskirts are becoming less and less the outskirts. And every time I say this, somebody's always in my comments and they're like, Sherman's not part of DFW. I'm like, yeah, it is. At this point, it is. Greenville it's part of DFW. It's continuing. The suburban sprawl is continuing to happen. So that's going to continue to happen. The other thing that I think is going to drive the train on a lot of this is as builders and developers try to figure out ways to keep costs down on the homes, what you're going to continue to see is a development of more MUD and more PID taxes. And we've talked about those. If you've been around my channel, we've talked about those before. MUDs and PIDs are development taxes. They're basically the way that, the developer and the city come together in an agreement and say, hey, we need roads, infrastructure, water, sewer, trash, upkeep, all of those things. And it's yeah, we totally agree. And then, that development piece gets passed along to the people that live in those neighborhoods. So you'll see probably, I would say, upwards of 80 to 90% of new development neighborhoods have some sort of either MUD or a PID tax, or there's a couple of them that have even added TERS, TIRZ tax, the same kind of thing. It's paid on your property taxes. So you're either going to see massive increases on base pricing to offset the expensive land development, or you're going to see increases on MUD PID property taxes. And I get it. Those is so hard, especially when you find yourself in a neighborhood that doesn't feel like it has a lot of amenities. I get looking at that. I will say that is one of the hardest things when we talk about property taxes in Texas as we continue to see value assessments rise and percentages go up, and there's a large chunk of your monthly payment that goes to property taxes. Now, I know we don't have state income tax, all of those things, it kind of offsets, but it still feels hard when we see that number go up and we're putting, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $1,100 a month into that account to pay those property taxes. But the mud and pid thing is not going away. Like, you're going to continue to see those be added in new developments. You'll still find the outliers here and there that may not have a mud or may not have a PID, but it's not going to be the norm. I just want to tell you, and again, as development and land costs continue to climb, that's going to have to be the way that the builders offset those kind of things. So just know that that's probably going to continue to stay. Again, just anecdotal notes for you to have information. All right, the next one that was talked about a lot with the lenders in the room while I was at this meeting is homeowners insurance, right? Everybody seems to think, and so if you own a home, you've probably already felt this, and if you're thinking about, you're getting ready to buy in that first space, we need to account for this. Your homeowners insurance is probably going to go up next year. One of the lenders in the room, they were talking about the idea that used to, when they would do a pre-approval for like clients to get ready to look at their debt to income and figure out their ability to qualify for a loan, all of that gets calculated in, right? Like the taxes and the insurance and the homeowners, it's all calculated into the monthly payment. Well, used to, they would figure, on average between a $400,000 and $450,000 house, they were figuring, hey, probably somewhere in the 16 to 18, maybe 1900 on insurance, depending on who you went with and your credit and things like that. And that's how they would calculate it. Now, they're actually changing their calculations to expect that homeowners insurance is going to be somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500, which is crazy. Part of that has to do, according to what they've heard from insurance and kind of what I've heard, part of that has to do with the natural disasters that we've had, the hurricanes, the flooding in North Carolina, Tennessee, the hailstorms that we've had here in North Texas, the business losses that they've had in states like California. All of those things, insurance companies are paying out a ton on premiums right now. And of course, when that starts happening, they've got to make up the difference. So it gets passed along to the consumer like everything else, unfortunately. So just know that, like, if you see what feels like a really high homeowners insurance quote, don't have sticker shock when that happens. Now, of course, you can shop your homeowners insurance, but I'll tell you, like, we were looking at ours, and our policy for the next year went up. It's like, I think it went up almost $600 for the year, which I was like, this is nuts. Like, we didn't even do anything crazy, but it's part of it. So just know that your homeowners insurance is going to go up, as well as property taxes are going to go up. Maybe one of these days we'll get some relief on the property tax side. I don't know. But lenders are having to calculate for that in your debt to income ratio. So those are kind of things we're hearing. Overall, the last one we're kind of hearing and talking about, and then I want to get into the chart and show you the numbers. The biggest question people are asking is, hey, are we still going to get rate buydowns? Are we still going to get incentives? Are we still going to get promos? And the consensus in the room felt like, yeah, for now, those are going to be here to stay. For how long? I don't know. It'll all depend on what happens in the market and demand and things like that. But the consensus in the room with all of those sales VPs and lenders is like, hey, rate buydowns are what's working. That's what's helping us move homes. That's what's helping continue to make us competitive, and it's helping us stand out against resale homes. So for now, builders are going to continue to offer either interest rate buydowns or closing costs or a combination of the two. But what I think we don't realize as a consumer, and this is not a woe is them pity, this is just like a awareness thing, is builders are spending a lot of money to buy into those, the forward commitments or the rate buydowns or the temporary buydown. They're putting a lot of money on the table to do that. It's not a small, insignificant cost. Now, they have the ability to do that, and we are appreciative of it. And that's why I still stand behind the fact that I think new construction is one of those spaces that I like to spend a lot of time in, because I still think there's really good deals to be found. And especially if you can find builders that are giving those rate promos, that are giving the closing costs, that'll help you get into a deal for as little cash out of pocket as possible, I think it's still a win in my book. So it's kind of what we're hearing. Now we're going to get into the really nerdy side. And again, I hope I don't lose you in this space. This kind of stuff is what interests me. And it really, I think if we take a data-driven approach to things, it helps things kind of make sense. And of course, it drives us to make the decisions that we need to make, whether it's the right time for us or it's the wrong time for us, because the answer is different for everybody, right? I have clients right now, they're like, hey, we want to build. And it's like, that sounds like a great idea. We're going to get you in and get you started and have your build ready to go by spring, summer. Others are like, hey, we have to move, right? Like, it's good and bad timing for everybody. And so if somebody says, hey, this is a great time for everybody, no, it's not. Hey, this is a terrible time for everybody. No, it's not. Like, the timing is what's right for you and your family, and we're just here to help make that happen. So let me pull up my charts and let's nerd out a little bit and see if I can give some thoughts on this, and I'll give you some closing thoughts on, I think, what all this should mean for you. Okay, a lot of the data that we're going to look at right on these next couple slides, this is all like Fannie Mae government data, right? Like I show you at the bottom, sources, secure data, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Okay, so those are all like government data sources. So this is what's interesting that I think is being shown. So credit quality of borrowers. So this is kind of where we talk about when they're looking at on average, it's saying, hey, what are we seeing with our borrowers? What are they like? What is their credit rating? Are they in a good space? Are they in a bad space? There's been a market increase in the size of down payments being made by homeowners over the last 5 years, primarily driven by saving more funds for closing or people contributing to families with gifts. Now I get it. Not everybody's in that position where they have people contributing, and a lot of our clients are doing everything they can to just get them into the house. And this is where, you know, everybody plays this game differently. And if we have any conversations, you'll hear me say, I'm of the belief that, hey, we want to get into the deal for as little of our money as possible to control the asset, right? So it's kind of like, hey, average down payments. Here's what we're seeing, and average DTIs. This chart right here is one of the ones that was super interesting to kind of take a look at. So average DTI, this is debt to income ratio. So this is saying, hey, what does your debt look like comparative to how much income you make? So most lenders really want you to be in that underneath that like 35-45%. But it's interesting to see, like at the end of 24, average wise, I mean, most everybody's hovering in this like 40% range, which is super. Again, it goes back to, hey, we're carrying more debt. Life is more expensive right now. Consumerism is up, credit card debt, all of those things, right? So I think this is kind of an interesting thing to study and look at. This is the one that everybody cares about. And again, always a disclaimer, I am not a mortgage lender. I have well-qualified, amazing mortgage people on my teams that I connect with and send people to. I just know enough about this to talk intelligently and answer questions and kind of show you what's going on. So this is as of October 23 or October 24. It says mortgage interest rates have have notably declined, dropped from 7.57 a year ago to 6.44. Again, this is end of October, November's timeframe, depending on when you're seeing this video. However, this is the one that always catches people. Despite the Federal Reserve's 50 basis point cut in September, rates increased by 35 points. And it's like, people were like, what the heck? What's going on? And it was like, yeah, we got to, where we got to. And now like it's even higher than that. And it's like, well, what's going on? And it's like, well, let me give you some data on that. Here's our current average rates, 23, 24, 6.61 or 8.1. I promise you at the end, I will give you what they're forecasting rates to be and what I think we should do about that. So just kind of, showing, again, data points. This one is kind of confusing. So I want to read it at the top and kind of see what we can pull from this. So it says, during September 2024 meeting, there was an implemented significant 50 basis point reduction in the federal funds rate. Next meeting is scheduled for November 12th, which is coming up. Initial market expectations have been adjusted from 50 basis points to a 92% probability of a more modest 25 basis point reduction. Looking ahead, here's what they think is going to happen with an additional 25 basis point cuts in December of 2024. So here's their kind of targeted rate probabilities. Again, we're still high on the mortgage rates, but they feel like, so Fannie, Freddie, all of those people, especially sitting in that room, there's a consensus that it's like, hey, if we can make it to spring of 2025, we may be in a really good place to buy, which could be good and bad, right? You may end up with more competition coming out of the woodworks with people ready to go. So the challenge you have in a place like DFW is you have all the people that are already here that are sitting on the sidelines waiting for this to make sense for them. And then you have the influx of people, which I feel like is probably somewhere around 1,000 people a day coming into the market. So you have this influx and builders still don't have enough inventory on the ground as a whole. So while rates may get better, competition may get higher. So it's just, again, like trying to take a look at it. And then here's, I think, the one that everybody actually cares about. So this is the macro outlook from Freddie with gross domestic product, unemployment, consumer price index, 10-year bond, 30-year fixed rates, all of the things that go into what we are seeing in our economy. And again, I'm not an economist. I just, these kind of things I nerd out about. But this is what I want you to look right down here at the bottom. Right? These two boxes is what is the forecasted 30-year fixed rate annual average to end 2024 and where we're going to be in 2025. So if we're ending at about expected a 6.6 and thinking we're going to get to 5.9 in 2025, we're not going to see those 2, 3, 4, we're not going to see those. But I'm just thinking out loud, if we have this right here and we still have builders putting money on the table for closing costs, you're going to be able to get to a solid rate. This is going to, I think personally, I'm optimistically excited about this. I hope we get there. I hope we get better. But this is where we're forecasting based on 30-year fixed rate mortgages. Again, this is all Fannie Freddie stuff from the government. So you could look at this one too if you want to look at the housing forecast. I think this is interesting based on total starts. We're going to see a percentage change year over year. I think so 2024, we were down 5.5% on starts, and going into 2025, we're actually going to be up. And I think that's going to be a huge deal. You're going to see builders continue to start homes as much as they can. We talked in a couple videos ago, if you missed it, City of Princeton, one of the fastest growing areas in DFW, put a moratorium on new starts through the end of the year, try and get their infrastructure stuff squared away. But we're projecting a 1.3% year over year growth from where we were this year. So you're going to continue to see more homes start. If you're trying to figure out, hey, what new developments are coming, or where can we go? What are you seeing? Get connected with us. I don't know about all of them, but I do know of a handful. As we hear about them, we try and keep everybody up to date as best as we can, which is why you should be subscribed to our channel if you're not. So again, nerd out on stuff like this. You can pause, take a look at it if you need to. And then here is the Zillow, say what you want about them, but whatever. Here's the home valuation forecast for annual change from September of this year to September of next year. Overall, I mean, we're seeing, I care about this one right here, DFW, a value forecast. So again, not massive price reductions across the board, pockets where you'll see good deals able to be had. Texas housing data, I want to show you actually so Dallas market. This is what we were looking at. Typical home value is 373. Active listings, we have 31,000. We are down. So as soon as we see this probable correction, I think you will see more sellers for resale and new construction getting stuff listed, and we're down on sales, monthly affordability, all that stuff. But this is the map that I care about the most. It is good to be in Texas. Utah, Idaho, Texas, South Carolina have continued to see the largest percentage growth in active residential addresses. So this is change in active residential addresses from January 2020 to August 2024. Texas is at a 10% growth. So 10, we've got 8 up in Nevada. We've got 13 in Utah. Crazy. I love seeing this. Again, some people will be like, we need to stop building. If you're coming here, we would love to have you. If you're here, I would love to help you. Doesn't matter. That's our sentiment. So what does this mean for you? I don't know. Here's what I do know. I know that there are still deals available. I know that builders are still negotiating within reason, right? We're not getting, 70, 80, 90, hundreds of thousands of dollars off. We're not getting to that in most places. Maybe a few unicorns. Builders are still negotiating. They are still putting incentive money on the table for build jobs, both in the terms of like design incentives and closing cost incentives. So that is still happening. Stuff that's on inventory that they are putting out they are still incentivizing at least, and I think they will through at least probably the first half of 2025. It probably will fluctuate as it always does. They'll see what works. They'll see how much they spend. So incentives are here to stay for now, which I think is good for you. So if you're in this space and you're like, well, what do we do next? Next, we have a conversation. We get you to the point where we say, okay, hey, what does that look like? What are you looking for? What can we find? And where can we look at a realistic payment, right? Where can we say, this is what a payment would look like. This is what my buy down would look like. Can we make something happen? If it's timing, I think we can make it happen. I will close with this thought that I will tell you, I am cautiously, not cautious. I am optimistic about what is coming in 2025. I think it's going to be a great year for growth. I think there's going to be opportunity if you know where to look. And I will continue to be as pro new construction as I can be. Like I said, we spend a ton of time in that space, and I think there's a lot of really good pros and cons. Of course, there's cons to everything, but I think there's more pros than there are cons. If I can help you get connected in any way, I would love to do that. If you're curious about like, what does it look like to negotiate with a builder? What can we even ask for? I've got a whole playlist right here that I think you should check out right now.